Good night and welcome to Mindful Life 115. Yes, it is Mindful Life 115. That suggests obviously there are 114 others. I am your host Nathan Springer, streaming live right now over on TikTok, on Instagram, and also on YouTube. Be sure to hit that like button. If you're streaming this over on TikTok or on Instagram, head over to the YouTube page, Nathan Springer over there, and be sure to subscribe so you can see all of these lives on repeat. If you ever missed any of them, you could head over there and see what we spoke about before. It's interesting stuff. Hit that like button and let's dive into it. Yo, interesting over there on TikTok. Good night, Tony the Ambassador. Tonight, we're starting talking about thieves. That's the topic tonight. Thieves. Because Trinidad has thieves. That shouldn't be a shock to anyone, but Trinidad has a lot of thieves. And just an interesting article. So an article, I like to look at these articles as the years progress and see how it changes with each passing year. And this year, the most stolen car is the Toyota Aqua. You know, I just like to keep that in mind every now and again because that's some useful information. I'm just letting you know. If you're buying a vehicle, that's some useful information to get. And this year, the winner of most stolen vehicle is the Toyota Aqua. And I just thought I would start off with that announcement tonight. In case you have a Toyota Aqua, look to get some GPS out there because these guys scraping Toyota Aquas. And a lot of the reason really and truly they steal these cars, beside the parts, is it's easy to blend in. So when they're going to do the drive-by or something, you know, an Aqua is the ideal vehicle for it. Your Aqua gets stolen and you see it involved in a crime in the next day. I was reading an article where they kidnapped and robbed an SRP officer, a lady officer, and to show how obviously the car was stolen, they robbed the lady after they took her to the ATM and made her take out some extra money. To let her go, the person drove off in the car, stopped the car and jumped out the car and ran away. Leave you, the victim, inside of the car because it's a stolen car. So, yes, stolen vehicles are a serious thing. And if you're driving an Aqua, just know that you're risking it out there with the Toyota Aqua. And beside the Aqua, we have scrap iron still as a problem in Trinidad and Tobago. And I have a contemplation that I'm going to drop tomorrow about that. And when I think about it, it just seems so strange to me. The scrap iron industry, when I look at it, these guys are stealing manhole covers. I don't know how many of you ever looked at a manhole cover. A manhole cover is engraved with whoever owns it. There's the engraving of whoever owns it, whether it's the regional corporation, it's WASA, it's whoever, that's engraved in metal on a manhole cover. A manhole cover isn't a difficult thing to identify. Like, I mean, it's like the cover itself is a medallion identifying itself. It's not the hardest thing to identify. Mordecai Daniel says, interesting question. Stolen vehicles boost GPS recovery sales. Do you think they can be connected? I mean, yes, they can be connected, I suppose, but there's no way to prove that. And that always goes together, you know. Criminality and finding and figuring out ways to stop criminality always goes together. And who is to say sometimes if the people that make money off of you paying them to stop criminals, if they wouldn't go out there to make sure criminals remain? And that's always a question. That's always a question. But I think it's difficult to just directly pinpoint it. And if you as a GPS company are stealing vehicles, I think that's a very high-risk game you're playing. Extremely high-risk game, but not impossible. Those men skillful, they would hide it inside something else to go undetected. But here's the thing, Tony the Ambassador. Here's the thing. All of these items go into a scrapyard. All of them. They are then packed, usually by hand, into a container. Very often it's by hand. It's packed into a container in many of those scrapyards. You're telling me, and these containers are usually separated by material. You're telling me there is no way any of the authorities, because all of these scrap metal dealers are registered, so every container that leaves the yard would be registered. The truck that is carrying the container would be registered. The weight of the material in the container would be registered. You're telling me at no point in time, and also, by the way, nearly all of these scrapyards have cameras. Lots of cameras. Because these scrapyards have to deal with conmen on all sides. Because remember, bear in mind, these scrapyards run on weight. Some of these fellas in the vans are looking to outsmart the scrapyard themselves too. They will come with a bag of big stone and hide it among the iron, and they're trying to get away with that too. So these scrapyards are generally very careful in looking at the product they get. So in a scrapyard, it is nearly always known if they have something illegal. They would know. They would know very well. They look at that stuff because that's how they make money. Good night, Ramchan B. Good night. Everybody making money, so they are going to turn a blind eye. And that's my point. And I'm saying it's not just everybody in the yard, because I think if police were interested in an investigation here, that wouldn't be something impossible to figure out. These containers are registered and labeled. You know which material is in which container. The police search one of these containers, find one stolen item, and it gives you the authority to search all, and this entire yard is shut down permanently. And I can assure you, if you shut down a yard for 3 months because of one stolen manhole cover, they're not going to accept manhole covers anymore, because it's just not going to be profitable for them. But as it is, they don't mind because it's profitable. No one is actually going to do the effort and search it. And it's insane to me that this is happening through our registered metal dealers, carrying out this thing through registered trucks, going onto a registered port, carrying these containers onto a registered ship and carrying it away with our manhole covers. It is ridiculous. Police wouldn't want to go through all of that to search for manhole covers. And then is the problem. That's the police job to me. That's the police job. And I don't think it's an all of that, because how many yards are there in Trinidad and Tobago? How many yards are there? If police do a stop and search in every yard before they leave with a truck, they regularly swoop in the yard and look into the container to see if they see anything. If that happens a couple times in some of these yards, that stops immediately. But it's clearly, when you look at this, it's clearly something that involves a wider array of people. And to me, when you look at what these guys are capable of doing, it tells you there's some added protection on this. These guys are not some highfalutin specialty thieves out there. These guys aren't planning high-tech robberies, but they could shut down the entirety of Mayaro Communications. They're stealing WASA cables. They're stealing TSTT and TNTech cables. And all these guys have is a K2700 van and a hacksaw. These guys aren't doing anything sophisticated. Yet still somehow they're able to shut down the country and get the country in a tizzy over all of this. An interesting one I read the other day. 2 held for stolen works ministry steel. 2 men were arrested on Tuesday after police found stolen steel belonging to the Ministry of Works and Transport at a scrapyard in Kunupia. In a media release, police said the men, a 36-year-old of Sangre Grande, and the owner of the scrapyard, a 33-year-old Chaguanas man, were arrested after the stolen steel was found at the compound at the corner of Ramlal Trace Extension and Uriah Butler Highway. Police said an employee at the ministry discovered the steel was missing on Tuesday afternoon. He told the police he last saw the items. Now, guys, listen to these items that happened to go missing from the Ministry of Works. And tell me How bold do you have to be for you to go steal this? 9 iron beams, 60 electrical steel pipes, 2 excavator buckets, an 18-inch one-way valve pipe, and 6 pieces of overhanging beam. How does someone steal that? How do you steal this? Listen, when you steal something, you steal a piece of clothes that you could fold up and chuck in your bag. You steal some money that you could put in your pocket. You steal some jewelry that you could hold in a bag. How are you stealing 9 iron beams, 60 electrical steel pipes, 2 excavator buckets, an 18-inch one-way valve pipe, and 6 pieces of overhanging beam? How is that possible? With a 3-ton, interesting says, yes, obviously, with a 3-ton, but not just a 3-ton, there's obviously a HIAB involved inside there. Almost surely there's a HIAB involved because men are not lifting up those things. That's not 2 hustlers you get to lift up excavator buckets to put inside of a 3-ton. That's more likely a 5-ton with a HIAB on it. And how bold would you be to take a HIAB with a 5-ton HIAB into the Ministry of Works yard, pick up their material and carry it home? When people go on robberies, when some of these young hothead youth men go on robberies, they steal a vehicle because, you know, it's easy to trace the vehicle. So they steal the vehicle, do the robbery, and then ditch the vehicle. I doubt these guys are stealing a 5-ton with a HIAB. You understand what I'm saying? They aren't stealing a 5-ton with a HIAB. So somebody owning a 5-ton with a HIAB is comfortable and reassured enough that nothing is going to happen and no one is going to recognize him. Enough that he is going to reverse into the Ministry of Works yard. Boop, 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 boop. Pull up. Put out his little extending, stabilizing bars business. Probably take out the plank of wood to, you know, make sure it level and everything. Shh. Pull out the HIAB, unfold it, and pick up excavator buckets and steel beams. That's not a robbery. That's not a robbery in the typical sense. I mean, yes, they are robbing the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, yes. But on the part of whoever is in charge at the Ministry of the Works, that's not a robbery. Somebody allowed them to come in and take that. Obviously, someone would have had to allow them to come in and take that. That's a PJ. Yes, that's not a robbery, that's a PJ. Somebody hired them to do that. No way that is possible. No way that is possible. And to me, that tells you it paints the picture very clearly about the entire thing in general. The entire thing in general is that many people who are involved in trying to make sure that this isn't supposed to happen, they don't really care. They don't really care. They just allow it to go as it goes, and they don't care that we are literally eating out pieces of our country and shipping it away and selling it. Like, that is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. When I look at these guys, they're cutting lines all over. Some of the lines they cut aren't even copper lines. They're cutting Digicel fiber optic lines. And Digicel released a statement begging the guys, listen, our lines have pure fiber optic. They don't have any copper. Stop cutting the lines, please. These guys don't care. They're cutting lines. You pass through Trinidad and Tobago, you see people with their lines hung down because the lines have a whole tension business going. So when you cut some from here and you cut some from there, it loses the tension. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And as much as annoying as it is to look at the people who are climbing up the poles and cutting the lines, the people who are taking up the manhole covers, there are guys who are willingly accepting these manhole covers and selling it. And there are people inside the Ministry of Works who are part of this scheme, obviously. That seems obvious to me. And then after, because to me, when I look at this, the problem here isn't getting rules to govern this whole thing. Theft, in case none of you know, in case no one in the live knows, theft in Trinidad and Tobago, stealing is already illegal. I don't know how many of you knew that. Stealing things in Trinidad and Tobago is already illegal. Yes. So it's not that we need some new fancy laws to take care of this. We have laws against stealing these things already. Someone needs to go out there and actually enforce the laws. But no, while the corruption is at fault for what is going on now, we figure out now, recently they say, 6-month ban on export of scrap iron proposed. The government is proposing a 6-month ban on the export of scrap iron to treat with the ongoing theft of copper cable. National Security Minister Fitzgerald General Hines, that's his middle name, General, made the disclosure at a media conference on Friday. The response follows the latest incident in which thieves and vandals struck Wasser's California booster station on Thursday, stealing electrical cables and disabling the facility. Similarly, over the weekend, vandalism of TSTT's underground cables resulted in service interruptions across South Trinidad. Hines condemns the malicious acts and warns that measures are coming to treat with the issue, including a heightened police focus on public utilities, installations, and legislative changes. So yes, they have been stealing cables and manhole covers for the past 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. But now we need to ban the entire scrap iron industry for 6 months in order to pass legislation to really deal with this. I am very curious to know what legislation. Yo, Easy 868, yes, you are on the inside. I am very curious to know what legislation would be passed to stop this. What legislation would be passed that would force corrupt people to not be corrupt? I wonder. And to me, when I look back on this, when I look back on following this story, the scrap iron industry for some time now, the scrap iron industry, at least certain parts of it, they knew this was the direction that it was obviously heading in. This whole thing wasn't sustainable. Obviously, they would have to shut down the industry, and they were begging the government not to do this. They were proposing that they had solutions. Scrap iron dealers beg PM Rowley, don't shut down industry. This is an article from almost exactly a month ago, 27 days ago, from July the 8th. Making a case for the poor, President of the Scrap Iron Dealers Association, Alan Ferguson, has pleaded with Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley not to shut down the industry, as it will put thousands of people on welfare. At a media conference in response to Rowley's statement at a post-cabinet press conference on Thursday that government would consider banning the marketing of scrap metal for a period, Ferguson said they want to work with the Attorney General to find solutions. Massimo says over on Instagram, this is truly shameful. When they're cutting the power, it's us that would suffer. When they steal the manhole covers, we are suffering as a nation. We need to get serious about this as an issue. I agree. Were you always so woke? Trinidad Mark asks. I don't know what you mean by woke. I wasn't always this knowledgeable. I learned more over time, but I was always curious about information, if that's the question. So, according to what you mean by woke, I guess. But yes, these guys have been, the scrap iron guys, they knew this. They knew, obviously, if it continues in this direction, obviously they're going to say we need to shut down the entire thing. And they're saying, please, let's not shut it down. Let's work together. Let's form some kind of legislation. Let's form some regulations whereby we could continue our industry. We can continue our livelihood without having to shut it down. They were saying this a month ago. Ferguson was confident the parties could find answers to brazen theft and vandalism of state infrastructure by some dealers. As he said, there were only about 8 scrapyards that export copper. One proposal to deal with exporting stolen copper was to have a police or customs and excise division officer present when loading shipping containers. This would ensure what enters the containers are the particulars of export documents. This was a proposal made at least a month ago. At least a month ago. Before we had the stealing of the TSTT main lines that cut internet usage and service to South. That was before that. That was before they stole the electrical lines out of the Wassa pump station that caused the pump to fail during flood times. That was before that. All the request was please place a customs officer when they're filling these containers. How many yards did he say? There were 8 yards. 8 yards. Are you telling me it is impossible to find inside of our security apparatus 8 officers, whether they be customs, police, or SRP, maybe even a traffic warden, 8 officers to stand at a yard and make sure no copper cables enter container? Is that so difficult? We can't find 8 officers who can recognize copper? That and all isn't going to solve anything because they can get paid off. Grand. I would love that. If you have 8 officers standing at 8 scrap yards and copper is still being stolen, then at least we eliminate it. Now we know now we know there are 8 officers we seek to question about this. We know that now. You can interchange the 8 officers and you see, okay, well, when Officer Harry is at Scrapyard X, copper tends to go flying very frequently. But when we move Harry and put George, for some reason they slow down on their copper export. I don't find these things are so difficult. I don't know. I don't know if investigations are just so impossible and we are only told Nancy stories out here, but when you get into the real world, it's just impossible to figure things out in the real world. It must be that way. I am not law enforcement, so I guess I am ignorant of just how hard these things are to be done. But to me, looking as a citizen of this country, I struggle to believe that it's hard to find 8 officers to look for copper in 8 scrap yards. I find that's hard. And here's the thing. They don't even need to stand in these scrap yards 24 hours of the day. Because as I've said many times, I'm a curious person. I have been in scrap yards for quite some time. I've chilled in a scrap yard and see how it functions. I know how scrap yards go. The containers leave at stipulated times. You come in when they're starting to fill it. You see the start. You come in when they're finishing fill it. You see the end. Here's the thing that's strange about that. Do you know these containers, when they are filled, are always inspected in the first place by the yard? So the yard knows everything inside of those containers. It's not hard for this inspection to happen. It's already inspected by the yard. It's just to have someone there now. I don't think that's a very difficult task. I don't think it's a difficult task. But no. That's impossible. So here's what we're going to do. Shut down everything. Everything must be shut down. And we'll write some legislation to somehow come back in the next 6 months and get honest people. If the problem was dishonest people, what are laws going to do to change that? This is the president of the Scrap Iron Dealers Association speaking. This is about a month ago. He was saying, I am begging you, please, Mr. Prime Minister, hear our cry, hear our plea that this industry employs thousands of poor people. Every single day, people eat food out of this industry. It is the last industry that poor people have in this country. And I know you care about poor people, Ferguson said. On Thursday, Rowley said some people did not care who they harmed while making a living by destroying infrastructure and marketing stolen metal materials. Sting operation, entrap somebody. Yeah, I don't think that's a very difficult thing. Certainly, I believe it is an excuse as well. I find it hard to believe that the only thing that could have been done was shut down the entire industry for 6 months. I find that hard to believe. And to me, if you're telling me that the only way you could have solved this problem was by shutting down the entire industry for 6 months, I might frown at your ability. I might frown at your ability to govern in the first place. Yes, shut down the entire industry. Yeah, of course. I frown at your ability to govern in the first place. It's like I remember this present government, the PNM government that is in ruling position now, in power now. Back in the 2010 to 2015 period when the People's Partnership was in power, the People's Partnership, there was a crime spike in the country and the People's Partnership did a state of emergency, shut down the country to some extent. And they said they did this to get a hold of the crime, to get a handle of the crime. And I remember this same PNM government speaking about, as a government, you shouldn't have to shut down the entire country to be able to get a hold on this. These scrap iron man thieving farmers' garden shed, they're wicked. I agree, they are wicked. I agree. I agree that totally. They are wicked. But I don't agree that shutting down the entire industry is actually going to solve that problem. As with most things, the wheels turn very slowly. And here's another reason I'm not sure how much of an effect this is going to have. I don't know how many of you are aware of how the scrap iron industry runs, but sometimes they collect material. Sometimes they don't export material anyway. So some of these yards may take 6 months storing up their material. And many of these yards have sub-yards. So yes, they are main scrap iron dealers. But some of the guys you see just with an oily yard and a set of scrap in the backyard, they aren't registered dealers. They are, as it were, holding stations, and they build up their own amount of scrap. And then they go over to the main yard to sell it. So in this 6-month period, if corruption is still going on, that isn't actually going to solve anything. The guys would just store up and stock up on their stolen copper. As soon as it opens again in 6 months, same thing again. We like the buying scrap iron old battery buying, man. By the way, for those of you who are usually in the live, my cup is usually a nice, exquisite black ceramic cup, but I upgraded. I went down to the Emancipation Village and I got me an enamel cup. True Trini. You know, I haven't seen enamel cups that regularly around. I saw an enamel cup and I was like, I need me a proper enamel cup. It hasn't yet fallen and gotten the characteristic chip, but I know at some point in time it will get that first fall, get the little chip. Of course, enamel cup for buttering roti, of course, but it still has the tag at the bottom of it. So when the tag comes off, then it will get its first christen on buttering roti also. We allow it to be imported from Venezuela when it banned here. When it banned there. Mr. Jeremy Francis again with the sort references. You go ahead down there and sort. Careful they didn't thief that cup too. Ha! I don't think the cup has that much value in scrap iron. Likewise, shutting down an entire sector could certainly place pressure on an already strained and struggling Trinbagonian economy. I agree, Massimo. Coming out of lockdowns and COVID craziness, is this really the best move forward? Exactly. Is shutting down an entire industry the best move forward in an already strained environment? Is that the best way to go? But the police are saying, they are on the job. They're trying to get things a bit more serious. I was reading out there in the capital because there were some things that recently took place in the capital that are getting a bit scary. When you look, good night, Mr. 1%. I don't know about that 1% business, partner. I am a man of the people. I am of the 99%. Man of the people. Yeah. But there were some crimes happening inside of the capital that were really scary. And the police have said that they're looking into this. They're looking to stop some of this. They're looking to hold up on some of this. I found a note inside of this, something one of the officers responding said that was interesting and showed that at least they are aware of this. TTPS ramping up security in Port of Spain warns public to expect some inconvenience. The TNT Police Services advising the public may soon face some level of inconvenience when accessing Port of Spain for work and leisure as officers renew their efforts to curb a recent spike in criminal activity in the capital. Speaking during the weekly TTPS media briefing at the Police Administration Building, Senior Superintendent Rishi Singh said there has been the conscious decision that in the coming weeks, in order to get our detections up, citizens are definitely going to have to understand that there's the likelihood of some inconvenience that is going to have to be borne as we ramp up certain operations. But we are confident that this ramping up is definitely going to attend to the safety in a way that we frequently experience during mass events. Singh, who heads the Port of Spain Criminal Investigations Department, admitted within the recent weeks we have seen some alarming issues happening in the heart of our city. Assuring the public that they are very much aware of what is happening, Singh said, it is of serious concern to us at the police service. To us as the police service, to the extent that the commissioner has called together all the various external and internal stakeholders to address the initiatives to fulfill our mandate. He said, and this is the part I found interesting, and I found this noteworthy, that he at least knows that many people have heard this before. He said, while this may sound like the rhetoric many are accustomed to hearing, the TTPS does in fact take its responsibilities very seriously. So he's aware that we have heard this many times. This rhetoric that they are looking into this and they are going to take care of this and they are figuring out ways to do this. Yes. We have heard this many times, but he assures us, although we always say this, we are taking our duties very seriously. I don't know how secure that would make many people feel, but okay if they say so. There are murders happening inside Port of Spain now. Singh said, what we are witnessing is that persons that are involved in gang activity have now felt the confidence to access persons who they normally will not within the context of the streets of Port of Spain. And I've said this before. You see this gang business that Trinidad is going down the line of? Gangs are a very difficult problem to tackle when they are embedded, because gangs form an in-group. And because of the nature of a group, the group becomes more important than the individual. The sum of the parts are more important than the parts themselves. And what that causes is a gang is able to get people to do more reckless, crazy things than they may have done as an individual. Here's what I mean by that. If I'm in a gang, and the gang as an entirety has a hit out on someone, and that someone is in Port of Spain, middle of downtown Port of Spain. As a gang, it's much easier to try to get some young guy trying to get into the gang to be willing to take that kind of reckless risk to go and do a hit out in the middle of Port of Spain. And if he is successful in it, the kind of upward mobility he gets in his rep inside of the gang, he is very much willing to risk that. Without the presence of a gang, if these guys were just doing criminal activities on their own, an individual on his own, the benefit may not be there for him to be that reckless. And that's why when there are gangs, you tend to see that kind of activity happening more. That kind of willingness to do a drive-by in broad daylight on a busy street. That's gang activity. That's hardly ever individual versus individual, that level of recklessness. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we are seeing a spike in gang activity. And I presume, as many countries in the West, as we move further and further into the social media age, we are ending up with more and more young men with a lot of time on their hands, with no real responsibilities. They are just young, single, reckless young men with nothing to do with their times, that with their time and energy. That's a very dangerous thing. And they are going to end up in gangs. And as they end up in gangs, you have an unending supply of young, reckless people willing to take insane risks. And the kind of violence that we would be able to see when there are young, reckless men willing to take insane risks, we don't want to see that in our country. And I think we are already seeing some of that. We are already seeing the nature of the violence in Trinidad and Tobago. Not the violence in and of itself, but the nature of the violence. How bold they are willing to go. We are already seeing that increasing. That is already increasing. The crimes that we have now are not the same as the crimes we had before. The nature of them. And that's what the TTPS is complaining about here. That's what they're talking about, trying to work on solving. There were multiple murders within like the last 30 days, at least 3 shootings inside the heart of Port of Spain. In daytime, that shouldn't be. And if you have on one side the accelerating reckless violence of the gangs and the young men, you have that on one side. And then on the next side, you have the fact that the police do not generally catch them. If one reckless act happens from a gang member and the police don't catch him, that right there is endorsement, encouragement for something more reckless down the line. So the combination we have of these reckless young men and the inability of the police to stop them is just going to keep ramping this activity up. That's my prediction. Unless the police somehow start to solve these and catch these men, or unless we find some way to divert the amount of young men from playing this very reckless game to using their energy to play another game that they could also win. Unless one of these two things happen, my prediction is we are going to see the spice in the violence, the recklessness of the violence, the flavor of the violence is going to increase. And in case you don't know, it can increase. If you look at some of those South American countries, when desperation increases, the kind of violence they have, yes, it's murder and murder is murder, but there's a difference between someone standing over a body and unloading an entire magazine into an already dead person's head. There's a difference between that and just someone passing and the kind of breaks in, shooting and running away. For probably the last 20 years, if you see camera footage of a lot of the killings in Trinidad, many of them were the people they're halfway kind of breaks in from shooting, like, oh, I didn't really want to shoot you, oops. But it could get more brazen and more violent. That is very possible. And that does not bode well for our country. And the problem, as I said, you feel them in, no? They have graduated. SM Resources, I was supposed to contact you about a possible day. Maybe Sunday. I'll message you. Thanks for being here again too. Glad you're all in the live. Whoever in the live, make sure you hit that like button as per usual. Hit that like button, allow it to feel your presence, and you can head over also to my YouTube and subscribe if you have not ever done that before. Well, yeah, there recently, to show the how much hope you could have in Trinidad and Tobago in that field. Recently, I was watching and I saw that it seems multiple officers are now getting caught. Nathan, tell your people the day up for the lime, or let us confirm when it's a good day. Yeah, Independence Day, tentatively Independence Day, we'll have a meetup. I realize you'd as well forget. Yes, I do actually. I do forget a lot. A whole lot. There's a lot in my mind. What am I going to say? I can't remember them all. But yes, Independence Day tentatively is the meetup for those interested. But yeah, over the last week I was watching and multiple police seem to be being caught recently in corrupt activities. And this is something that I've always wondered about as times change. The boldness with which many officials have become accustomed the boldness with which many officials have become accustomed with corruption would allow them to get caught. I read, was it last week? There was a couple. I believe the initial report was two gentlemen. The initial report, I believe. And that initial report, those two gentlemen were caught in a compromising position. And police officers caught them and demanded a bribe. They took $2,500 up front and were promised the other $2,500 later. Now, these men the victims set up a sting operation and caught the police when they went to pay the next $2,500. And Nathan, the twins, I realized, saw them in person. Where did you see them? Where did that happen? Meetups happening without me knowing? This can be very terrible for society, as radical ideologues can appeal to their aggression and competing for ranks and girls to harness that, such as the Nazis or Soviets did. That is very true. I was speaking about that, was it Friday? Was that last Friday or Monday? I was speaking about that. There's every society that ever existed was very afraid of young, single, childless men getting too high in number. When you have too high a number of young, single, childless men, your society tends to become erratic, unpredictable, and very violent. That's why you want these young, single, childless men to go partner up and make some babies, lower that testosterone level, lower that energy, go and be productive in society. Because generally speaking, young men without that pull could get very reckless. Many societies, before I spoke about this in another live before, many societies, if you look through history, many societies would go to war just to get rid of those, well, that sounds brutal, but to some extent to get rid of that young, single, childless men. And the societies before that were polygynous in nature, meaning that one man would have multiple women, which was like 98% of all human societies. What that meant was there were even more young men who were disenfranchised of having a mate. So the big boss in this area have more ladies, so you don't have any. And if you remain here, of course you're going to get yourself up to trouble. So you know what they're going to do? Here's what we're going to form an army with you, and you go out and conquer some other land. You go and conquer somewhere. That's what the Vikings were for the most part. The young, single, childless men, send them out to go and conquer something. In most civilizations, if that number reached too high, you end up with a revolution on your hand. It's a dangerous thing. I have real babies to make to ease. Okay, Chinese Douglas. You do you, sir. Once you can mind them all, more power to you, sir. More power. You go out there and populate the world, brother. You go populate the world. But yeah, two police were, I don't know about two, but a police was caught on that bribery charge with the two with the couple that he tried to bribe. And then I saw there was another case from yesterday. Where two other police were caught on another bribery charge. But Chinese Douglas is the 1%. I know that, you know. All those people who always accuse you of, hey, you are big shot by them is the people who always loaded it. No wonder you so learn, articulate, and law abiding. You unload it different. 3.6 million bail for 2 cops charged with corruption. 2 police officers have been granted bail totaling 3.6 million to answer 7 charges of misbehavior in public office and unlawfully and dishonestly agreeing to accept and receive monies. And I'm going to read their name, were both granted the bail sum. Police said during April 2022, a man met with the officers at a location in North Trinidad where they allegedly solicited $700,000 from him to forego prosecution in the investigation of a criminal matter. The man complained over a period of time. He made 5 payments totaling $201,000 to 2 police officers. A report was made to the police and an exercise was conducted by officers of the Professional Standards Bureau. That's what I think we should be doing much more of. Because I find a lot of these public officials, they accept bribes real bold. You know what I'm waiting on? I am waiting on this sting operation on the licensing department. I am waiting on the licensing department to ask somebody, you pay, and them to have their camera phone running live right here. I'm waiting on that. I cannot trust that anybody in authority in Trinidad and Tobago is serious about cleaning up any area if I haven't heard about the licensing department being cleaned up. Because for me, as a nice, decent fella growing up in a nice, stable home, one of my first introductions to how common corruption is in Trinidad and Tobago was the licensing department. Hey, bring the punching from way by. Where the punching coming from? What is this punching you talking about, Samir? So, that was one of my biggest shocks. I was amazed when people, when you go there and people talking about you go and pay, and I'm like, what do you mean pay? What do you mean pay? And they're like, you know you could pay for it? And I'm like, sweet. All of us talking about bribery here, and you know, me as trying to be a decent person, you're like, so all of us talking about bribing the people here? Is bribery we're talking about? And like, yeah, everybody bribing Trinidad, that's how. And I'm like, wow. That was one of my first introductions to how blatant corruption is in Trinidad and Tobago. And I find it hard to believe any politician is serious about tackling corruption if you have blatant corruption like that still standing in the society. How is it so, like, oh my goodness, let it at least be a little underneath. That one is so obvious. No wonder there are so many reckless drivers on the roads. Huh. I find that ridiculous. Nathan, I need my license. Shh. Here's what I believe. If there wasn't the bribery system, it would actually be easier to get your license. Because what I find they allow people who bribe to pass through easier. And if you don't bribe, you get a harder practice session. You get a harder test. So if there were no briberies, it would actually make sense. I find it ridiculous. Because one of the main demographics of paying are women. No hate on you women, but this is something I've noticed in my own amateur study looking around. One of the main demographics of payers for license I found were women. And I found it ridiculous that these licensing officers were afraid to carry these people, these learners, out on a main road and would allow them to pay them and give them a license. And then the next day, this person could come out on the highway. Tell me how there are people with licenses, Sasha Orb, that is, I got that information nowhere but in my head. That's not any study anyway. That's my opinion. Sasha. Y'all could rightfully take me to tongue on my opinion that women do not pay for their licenses more, but that's my opinion. The day that I was there, I think every single woman I saw paid for her license on the day I was there. It's pure opinion out of my head. But it's from opinion looking at certain things. And then I hear some of these people saying like, you know, I don't drive on the highway, you know. I don't know how to merge, you know. Like, what? How could you have your license and don't know how to merge onto the highway? You, Akeem Thomas over there on Instagram. How do you have your license and don't know how to merge onto the highway? What are you telling me? And then these people out here are driving with everyone else on the nation's roads. Doesn't make sense to me. Does not make sense. Good evening, Akeem Thomas. What's up, bro? Bad drivers does get me mad. Not you alone. Not you alone at all. I will take over that driver and drive 2 miles a longer drive than to stay behind bad drivers. Oh my goodness, it's a nuisance. I can't take the bad driving either. It gets on my nerves. And I'm not one that wants to be going out there getting involved in road rage. Because a consideration I always have is that some percentage of people on the roads in Trinidad and Tobago driving around with their guns, if there are murders occurring every day in Trinidad and Tobago, multiple shootings occurring every day in Trinidad and Tobago, and them shooters don't be walking and traveling to where they're going. Those guys are in cars. So I always, just have it in consideration that possibly the guy who gave you a bad drive probably now coming from paying down a walk. That is, that helps me to bat in my crease. That helps me to bat in my crease. You see the bad drive, and right before you press the window to wind it down, you're like, maybe he have an AR inside there, and maybe he just finished doing he do. Let's behave ourselves out here. Bat in my crease. Let me reach home safe. You go safe, boss. I hate when people want to drive slow, and then when you're going to overtake, they want to speed up so you don't pass. Hey, that I don't like either. I don't understand it. If you want to drive at 80, cool. If I want to take you over at 100, how you now recognize you wanted to drive at 100? I am confused about that. I am confused. Who gets into the majority of accidents in this country? Or Sasha Orb, you're still on the man versus woman thing I get. Men get in the majority of accidents in this country. Now, should we go down this road, boy? Because I actually did read up on this before, I actually did read up on this before. Because there was a claim women are safer drivers. So I wanted to see if that is true, because I found in my experience, it's not true. I'm sorry. It's just my experience. It's not just that men get in more accidents. It's that men drive more kilometers, more miles per day. When you control for miles driven, men get in less accidents by proportion of miles driven. Men drive more miles, so they get in more accidents. That's what I didn't even know that. I always heard this statistic, men get in more accidents, but I didn't know it was just a total general number. When I looked into it, you recognize it was a per miles thing, and as you equate per mile, women get in more accidents. I don't even understand why people fight that, really and truly, because to me, women drivers who could drive are the drivers I know who hate women drivers the most. I don't know anybody who don't like women drivers more than other women drivers. I know I have some. I don't wanna put nobody up. But there are some people close to me that are female drivers that I know. And when you sit down in the vehicle with them and you hear them going on a woman driver. You see, it had to be them other woman drivers. It's always an next woman and shaming we on the road. I like, hey. And listen, nobody have road rage like a woman, eh? I listened to a psychologist explain this. And this is the reasoning, and it made a lot of sense to me. Why women have more road rage. I don't like old people on the road. Hey, Ria, I play this game. This is a horrible game. It's kind of mean-spirited in a way. But I do play this game. When you're behind a certain car and you see it driving a certain way, I guess the driver. I say, that's either... All you understand the context. It's a game I play, friendly game, all in love. All in love. But I guess whether that has to be a woman or an old person. And it kind of shocks you how often you could guess a woman or an old person. Like, I'm sorry, but I just find you're behind a driver. Yo, Holly, what's up? What's up? You're behind a driver. You see a kind of shimmy, and you're like, that's a woman or an old person. And here's the thing that kind of frustrates me sometimes with women. I love y'all. I'm glad women driving on the road. I don't wish that we are Saudi Arabia. But this is just, I'm speaking honestly, you know, we could resolve some things here as different genders. You know, we could get to some resolution through this. A question, it's something that always frustrates me. Most of these women drive newer cars than men. This is something that I noticed too. Women tend to drive the newer cars. Women always have a better ride. So, their new cars have good acceleration. So the woman, through the little bad spot on the Holly, oh gosh, don't come and confess these things inside the chat. Don't come and confess your crimes in the chat, please. Keep your crimes out the chat. Keep your crimes out the chat. But women have the new cars. Drive slow in a little technical drive. Take the corner at 20. Frustrate you behind them. You say, all right, I reach on the straight, I go and take this woman over and get this drive over with. Take over way. As soon as you reach on the straight, bear in mind there's a new car engine that Sistrin have. Sistrin sinking that accelerator and reach 0 to 60 in a 3 seconds. You in your old car, you're not taking her over. That's the frustration. You can't take them over on the straight because they accelerate real hard. And then when they reach the technical drive, they come down to dog slow. So you frustrated, you behind here like, oh gosh. Look at straight. I go and take over away. Whoosh. Pain all over. I just don't understand it. I do not understand it, ladies. Can you all explain that to me, please? Can you please explain that? Why is it that you have to accelerate like that? Just let us pass now. Let we pass. But yes, I was going to explain why a psychologist, this I heard from a psychologist, why women engage in road rage more. I'll say this before we dive out because we done had some good time in the live here. The argument is this. Listen, y'all listen carefully. Psychologically, why women engage in road rage more. When men have a disagreement, there's basically always an underlying threat of physical. If Nathan say hormones is fine. No, it's not hormones. When men get into a disagreement, there's nearly always an underlying threat of physical violence. Two men arguing through the window to each other out of a car understand that you push this over a certain line, we're going to reach the blows here. You don't see a man run up in a next man's face and chuck up his hand in the next man's face. So chuck up his hand. unless they want to fight, because men know that. Women do not have that underlying fear. When a woman winds down her window and tell you about your mother and your grandmother and how they dotish and how you can't drive, she does not have the fear that a fight is going to break out. And psychologically, that's why women very often are able to accelerate verbal disagreements to such a higher degree, way more than men are willing to. You see, me, as I said, sometimes when I get a bad drive, I always have to consider, that might be a zessa now coming home from paying down a work, and let we not find out if he feeling to kill an extra, if he feeling to toot an extra body tonight. Let we not find out. But a woman, she not studying that. I don't care. Listen, some of these women, when they hopped up on their road rage, the man could probably pull out the gun and aim it at she, and she might take it and slap it with. How you stupid so in driving? Because they don't care. That worry is not the same to women. And to be fair, I like that. I like that. And I think that's how it should be. Very honest. I think that's how it should be. Women shouldn't have the same fear of violence as men. That's how society should be. You see, I am not a hypocrite in it. I believe in gender roles. I believe in the differences between the genders, and I'm okay with that. So, as a woman, I allow you run up in my face and you quarrel and all of that. Just make sure, you see, and this is the problem that some women have. Do that when you're by yourself. Do not do that when you're with your boyfriend or your husband or another man. Do not put up your men. Because, you see, the underlying threat of violence wouldn't go towards you. It will go towards your man. And you might be writing a big check that your man might not be able to cash. So rate up when you by yourself in your car. If you see a man in your car, think about your man. You understand? If it's your daddy, think about your daddy. If it's your brother, think about your brother. And don't do it, ladies. Because I've seen that one before. And I know people have seen that one before where the ladies create a situation that the man cannot get himself out of. Poor soldier drowning in the waters that his wife or his woman put him in. Do not put up your men. It's different for the men. It's different. You could run up in the next man's face and put your hand, but if you run up in the next man's face, put your hand, and the man swing around so and see your man sit down in the car, he will take it out on your man. So, ladies, just a bit of advice before I dive out, don't pop your men out there. Watch the road rage. Bear in mind, Trinidad have a lot of people driving around with a piece of iron on them, Take it easy on the roads. All right. Any further questions or comments before I dive out of the Mindful Life for tonight? I'm putting my, oh geez, Sasha, oh geez. So road rage when you're alone in the car, noted. Yeah, Sasha. That brutal. Imagine. Listen, that is how women could be slick in it. Imagine your ex call you, Halil, let me get some closure. Let me go and eat at gyros and talk and get some closure about this. She drive you down the main road, right in front of Belmont or something there. Hit somebody a bad drive and start to reel up. You don't know all this time that sister really putting you up. You jump out the car thinking, when we were in a relationship, I didn't stand up as I should. And she hitting you that line, whole driver, she hitting the line, You know, when we in we were really, and I just found that, you know, you didn't used to stand up for me as much, you know. Ravi, I just find Ravi, you didn't used to stand up for me. Anytime something happened, you just used to leave me alone in a Ravi. And you don't know she done beating you and put you up, and she will cry for you after. Fellas, stay above the influence. You see the ladies admitted themselves here in the chat, fellas. Women are able to plot further than you, eh? Women are generally able to plot further than you. They will plan it out. You thinking 2 moves, she thinking 22 moves, fellas. Bat in your crease. All right. It was good. That's all for the Mindful Life for tonight. I will see you guys again Monday night for the next Mindful Life, unless there's another live somewhere that I go. You know, someone was telling me that, and I'll try to do it next time. I'll try to go live. I ignore you. I need advice because you're looking better than me. What advice is that, Chinese Nathan? Advice to grow up to be like you? What advice you want to grow up to be like me? Read plenty. I guess. Read plenty. That's about all the advice I'll give here. We could have other sessions where we could go into more specifics. But yeah. And yes, grow an exquisite mustache. It certainly does help. Thick Galen Andrews, thanks for all the... I'm reading your autobiography. Thanks for all the roses very much. And I will see you guys again Monday night. If I'm in another live, as I was saying, I will attempt to, you know, go live from my profile. Ria, ease me up. This is as exquisite as it needs to be. Thank you very much. Good night, people. Good night. Hold it down. Ministry of Engineer.